Right.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for agreeing to have a chat today. I thought it would be valuable to have a conversation about what happens at the point that someone gets an approved offer and the point that they instruct a conveyancing solicitor.
Great. So what we find is that once the offer's been accepted, people like yourselves will generally recommend particular solicitors who they know and are trusted to them, because they can ensure that they help aid their clients through that process. So generally their details are passed on to ourselves, and we will then at that stage contact them and answer any questions, because at that particular time it's fraught with questions. What's happening next? What do I need to do? So we try and answer as many of them questions as we can at that stage, and also provide a breakdown in relation to cost, because that's an important thing for clients. And also when you're budgeting in relation to what you can buy, if you've got an onward purchase, it's very important. And with the new Law Society guidance in relation to clarity, all solicitors have to be very transparent in relation to pricing now. So there's not any hidden costs involved, which is great for the clients. So that's generally the next stage, having accepted an offer.
Great. So at the point then that you are instructed, we would do the memorandum of sale, which would give contact details of all the parties concerned. And then typically, what are the next stages that happen, Sarah, from that point?
So from our instruction and receipt of the memorandum, we then open a file. Now, the bundle of paperwork that comes out to the seller and the buyer is quite immense, really, and it can be quite off-putting right at the beginning. But one of the things that you'll probably see is something that looks a bit like this, which is a what's classified as a client care letter. So in there, you're going to have confirmation of who's going to act on your behalf, who you can contact on a day-to-day basis. It'll confirm what costs have been discussed with you, and also any terms and conditions. Now, also within there, it's a fact-finding mission as well for your conveyancer, because they don't know a lot about you at that stage. So they're trying to gain as much information so they can anticipate any issues for you and deal with them ahead of schedule. The Law Society also set down certain forms which form part of your contract pack, which will also come out at that stage. And it's sent out with that initial paperwork to make sure there's no delays later on. So you'll see something called a fittings and contents form, which I can get that way, which is like a tick box all the way down. All it wants to know is, are you leaving it or not? Now, some people send that straight away, which is great, and some people decide that they want to have a bit more consideration. That's great, but just be mindful that your buyer, it's one of the most important things to a buyer. What are you going to leave? So if you leave that out of your contract pack, it's going to create anxiousness for your buyer. So if you're just mindful of that when you're sending your paperwork back. Then you've also got a thing called a property information form, which kind of goes through your property itself. So it's asking if you've done alterations, what's the boundary responsibilities, it's asking about flooding, electrics, gas and warranties, that type of information. Now, sometimes it can be a bit daunting, so just pick up the phone, happy to go through any particular questions that people have in relation to any particular questions. And it's also worthwhile at that particular stage, if you do have copies of guarantees, if you do have fences, certificates for your windows, certificates for boilers, that type of thing, to get them all together and pass them on to your conveyancer at that particular point, because it will stop questions later down the line, because your first letter from your solicitors acting for your buyer will generally be, please provide copies of X, Y and Z, and that's shaving off maybe 10 to 14 days off your transaction by just providing them up front at the start.
Great. Wonderful. So that's all the paperwork that is initially done. What about searches, Sarah? At what point are they initiated by clients typically?
Okay, so for a buyer, once we receive the contract pack from the seller's solicitors, so on the reverse, the seller's now completed all the paperwork that I was just mentioning. They get the title and they'll have a look at that and make sure the plan attached to the title accords with what the buyer believes they're buying, because there is circumstances where separate bits of gardens are on different titles. So we always check, make sure that it encompasses everything, and as soon as we've got that confirmation, we try and get the searches done at that early stage. The reason for that is that councils can take a varying length of time, from anything 2 to 3 weeks for searches. And unfortunately, in this particular area, we have Flintshire, who have a backlog of about 5 to 6 weeks before the COVID crisis. And it's been extended even further now. So we get them up at the earliest opportunity.
Great. Wonderful. That's really, really helpful. Thank you very, very much, Sarah. Is there anything else that is worthy of note in the process that is helpful for you to identify to people up front that would help you?
The main thing for us is we don't know anything about your property. So if there's any intricacies, if there's any works or anything like that, you're best off telling us as soon as possible, so that we can then guide you in the best way to deal with any issues that gets raised. If we don't know and then it gets raised on survey, you're almost on the back foot at that particular point. So advise us as early as possible regarding works, have your certificates available. One thing to think about if you got married, so a lot of people buy with their partners and then get married, forget that their property is in their old name. You need to make sure you get a copy of your marriage certificate to your solicitors. That's a big one. Another one that generally causes delay because people have put them in that safe place and can't remember where it is. So yeah, that one stings. Copies of grants of probates if people have passed away. That's always helpful right at the start. They're probably the main ones.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And it is lovely to, to have you nearby. We're obviously doing this by video, but of course you and I are just literally round the corner. So, it's good that even if issues come up, we can, always overcome them. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to walk through those forms today, Sarah. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.